like I said, I'm Mikey Taylor. I work with Crew here in the area, which is a campus ministry, along with David and Star, who's sitting there back in the back. And I'm really excited about that we're doing this conference on discipleship, because that's like the bread and butter of what I do and what I'm passionate about and things like that. And I'm also glad, so if you know me very well, you know I'm not a details person, and I got things crossed and thought my niece was graduating in Chattanooga yesterday. And I was like, ooh. So they talked to me about doing this, and I was like, oh yeah, I like that idea. And then I was like, oh, Callie's graduating. I want to be there for her graduation. So this Tuesday, I was still thinking, okay, I'm going to drive to Chattanooga, go to graduation, go to dinner with them, and then Saturday morning, get up and leave my parents' house by 6 a.m. to be back up this way. And then I called my sister on the way back from Lexington on Tuesday, and she was like, no, that's in May. I was like, oh, good. So my wife was like, yeah, I was pretty sure you were wrong, but I was just going to let you do what you were going to do. She was just going to let me go for it. Yeah. Cindy would probably say it's a husband thing. Yeah. Yeah. I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants type of guy. And so yeah. So that's how I ended up. But I had a much better, more relaxed morning, I guess, quasi-relaxed at the soccer field in the rain. So I've changed outfits since then because I was very, very wet. And so I know y'all been talking about a lot of good content on what does it look like to disciple somebody, what is like just the heart for discipleship. And you may be thinking like, okay, this is great. I want to do this, but how? Like, what does it look like to actually disciple somebody? And so what I get to talk to you about today is just what on the practical side of like, okay, I have somebody, I want to disciple them, what do I do? What does that look like? What does that mean? How do we define discipleship? And I was talking to Stephen, I think, and I know y'all have hit on the idea of like, okay, how do I decide who's a good person to disciple? And I want to hit on some things and maybe highlight some other things that we've talked about on campus in terms of deciding who it is that we want to disciple. And so I think he mentioned the idea of FAT, faithful, available, and teachable. Well, we've started using the acronym FAITH. And so you've got somebody that's faithful, somebody that's, willing to commit to meeting with you. Like they're going to say, okay, this is a priority. I want to get invested in. And so I'm going to make time to do this. And then available, it's like somebody that has the time and the capability to do it. And that doesn't mean that they're not a busy person in general, but it's like they have the capacity to engage with you and like learn from you and able to follow through in the things that you challenge them to do and things like that. And then the I in faith is influencer. And so as you're doing discipleship, there'll be kind of a variety of people that you're doing. But one of the things you want to think through as you're discipling people is I want someone that's going to be able to multiply themselves into somebody else. You'll have some of those people, it's like, hey, I'm pulling them up. They're a new believer, or, you see there could be potential down the road, but you're like, feel God saying, I want to invest in this person for a season. And so you'll work with them. But a lot of times when you're looking for someone to disciple, you're like, I want somebody that I know has the ability to not only like take this in and learn to grow for themselves, but also be able to multiply that into somebody else. And so you can have those generations of discipleship happening because, for the last 2,000 years, that's how the church has moved forward is people have poured into somebody else who's poured into somebody else and kind of down the line. And I heard a quote from one of a guy on staff, and I forget if he quoted this from somebody else, but he said, the gospel came to us on its way to somebody else. And you and I both know the gospel because someone else chose to invest in us. And so that's the idea of discipleship. Like we want to choose some people that will be able to invest in others as well. And then teachable is that's just somebody that's willing to listen to you. Somebody that's willing to open up and say, you have the right and access to engage me in some of these more sensitive areas. Somebody that they're willing to listen to you. They're willing to like let you have those hard conversations like y'all were talking about before, and like not just get defensive, but also okay, God, what are you trying to show me through this? What is it that I need to hear and understand to be able to do this? And then the H is just heart for God. Somebody that has a desire to grow in their relationship with God. Like they have a desire to spend time in the Bible. They have a desire to grow in their faith and spend time in Christian community. And you can just tell that they want it. They may be rough around the edges. They may be kind of up and down, but it's like you can see that their overall desire is they want to grow in their relationship with God. So that's the kind of people we're looking for, people of faith. They're faithful, available, influencer, teachable, and they have a heart for God. And so I want to start by looking in Mark chapter 3. I'm just going to read a couple of verses. Last night I was sitting down to kind of like organize my thoughts because I had a note on my phone where I'd been writing down some thoughts. Was like, I need to create a flow for this because I could just come up here and talk about it, but I want to make sure like I'm focused. And I was like, I bet there's something out there that Crew has on this. And I found a document that was like, okay, yes, this lines up with what I want to do. So, and it gave me a verse to start out with, which I was like, yes, I was already thinking along these lines. And so we're going to start in Mark 3, and we're going to start in verse 14 and look at 15. 13 and 14. And it said, and he went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach. And so as we look at that verse, as Jesus calls his disciples, what's the first thing that he calls them to do? Y'all can respond. What was that? Yeah, be with him. And so that's, as we think about discipleship, like this isn't a project. This isn't just, an investment. Like this is a relationship you're forming with this person. And so it's like part of discipleship is doing life with them, like giving them access to your life as well, bringing them into things that you're doing so they can kind of naturally see you do things. Like if we look at the life of Jesus and how he did ministry with these 12, it's like a lot of teachable moments came out of them just doing life together. And he would pull them aside. It's like, all right, here's what happened in this scenario. Here's what you can learn from that. And I've been watching The Chosen recently, and I think they do a good job of showing how Jesus would do that in different aspects. And so it wasn't always Jesus just sitting down and like, all right, guys, circle up. I'm going to teach you something. But it was like, as life happened, things like that can happen. And so, like you want them to have a relationship with you and you want them to have a relationship with God. And then he did that so that he might send them out to preach. And so it's like you're going to have this relationship so that you're equipping them. And so as I think about discipleship, like it's really just an intentional relationship with somebody. It's this idea of like it's somebody that you're like intentionally thinking through, how am I going to invest in them so that they can do what God has for them? It may be similar to what you're going to do, what you're doing for God. They might be right aligned with you and go the same route. Or it may be you're preparing them for this next angle God has them going for and stuff like that, which, working with college students, it's like for these few years, we're all on the same path, doing the same thing, but knowing that they're going to spread out around the world when they graduate, and who knows what God has for them. Like we always, we talk about in Crew, we challenge people and we recruit them hard and unashamedly so because we believe in what we do, but we also know we're not the Holy Spirit. And so we just want them to go, okay, God, what do you have for me? And we're going to celebrate whatever that is as we see them go, okay, God, I'm ready. Send me. What do you want me to do? Whether that's to go to med school, get a job, or go into ministry. Like it's all exciting because they're being sent out to do what God has for them. And so it's cool thinking about that relationship that way of like you're being intentional with them to help them discover, okay, this is what God has for me next, or to just kind of uncover what God could use them to do or how God wants to work in their life. Because you may be discipling some people that have been walking with the Lord for a few decades, or you may be discipling somebody, it's like they became a believer last week and they are totally clueless. And so it's both are good, and you just get to come alongside. And so getting into that, I wanted to talk about, okay, what is it, as I'm meeting with somebody, like, what do I do? And give you some ideas and tracks to run through. Because as you're discipling somebody, you want it to be balanced because you want it to be a relationship. And so as I'm looking out, I actually, this semester I've not been great at it because, like I said, I'm not a details person. But I have, for each of the guys that I'm discipling, I have a spreadsheet. And I have different columns. And then, yeah, Phil's right there. Different columns. And like, I'll write down the date and then put what I did with them under each column. And so the first column, I'm going to click on this so I keep these in order. It might be, how am I building my relationship with them? Like, what am I doing to like just do life with them? And so it may just be grabbing coffee and talking about what's going on in their world, or catching up on what they're interested in, or maybe there's a mutual interest, like you support the same sports team or something, and so it's like you're doing that together. And several of my guys over the years have enjoyed to run, and I like to run too, and so it's like I would invite them to go run at night, and so that would be part of our discipleship. We would go on runs because as you're running, we would talk about stuff, just talk about life, what was going on, or no real like agenda when I was going to run with them, but it was like just a good way to spend time with them. And so that's a way to think about it. It's like, okay, what are things that y'all can do together just to spend time together? You can invite them into your home. You can, go to their home. You can, whatever it is, play games together. Just doing things where it's like you're doing life together in certain ways. It could be running to the grocery store together because, we all have to go at some point. Or if they have to go to the DMV, you could go with them, even though, that can be a life-sucking place at points. But, you could encourage each other through that. But yeah, so, so I'll have a column that's like, okay, what am I doing to like just build that relationship with them? And then the second category would be like, okay, being in the Word. Like, what am I doing to renew their mind in the Word? Like, how are we like talking about? It could be as simple as just talking about, okay, here's what I read recently, or asking them, okay, what have you been reading? What's God been teaching you? And those are questions that I'll ask. And because we know like the Word is what changes people. What we have to say, might be great, but it's not going to change their life like God's Word, which is living and active, is going to do for them. And so I want to make sure that it's like I'm getting time in the Word with them. And that can be part of their training and equipping, is just like some of it is just being in the Word. Like they may not understand how to study the Bible. And so walking them through, okay, here's some ways that you can study the Bible. Here's some things that you can do, or sharing like, I've had moments where it was stale, and it's like I would just pull out my phone and hit play and just have it read the Bible to me while I'm in the shower, in the car, or just like going to sleep, just because it's like I know I need it, and so it's like here's what I'm doing. And being willing to be open and vulnerable about those times where it's like, yeah, I have dry periods too, and that's a part of life, but it's like you still want to invest in that. Or like some people love to journal, and like just asking like, hey, what have you been journaling about lately? Or have you ever tried journaling? And stuff like that. And then you also want to think about, okay, how are you involving them in ministry? Like one thing I love to do with my guys, which is always intimidating, is like just to go out and try to share my faith. Go engage somebody in conversation about Jesus. And that can be somebody that you already know, or somebody that you just run into and do. And so it's like, there'll be times where I've got a guy on campus and we'll just go walk around, see who we see. And I'll usually ask them is like, is there anybody you see that you want to have this conversation with? Because they're in classes. They know more people than I do. I always say they're insiders on campus. I'm an outsider. And so it's like they have connections I don't. And so if they see somebody, it's like, all right, we'll go do it. And we have tools that we'll use. Like if David wants to hold up on that back table, one of them that I let Stephen borrow, Solarium, it's a 50-image survey that you ask them 5 questions that they use the pictures to answer, questions about themselves and about spiritual things, and just get into a spiritual conversation with somebody. It could be as simple as walking up and just being like, hey, what's your spiritual background? Like as you get to know somebody, or asking them a random question just to see. And so we'll go and like do ministry, or it could be like going to Rebuild and doing something with them that they have going on, or something that City Church or another church has going on, inviting them to come with you, because there's nothing like doing ministry side by side, because you're going to grow. You're going to mature. Like, you're helping out with the youth group. You're helping out with the kids. Like, have them come with you, because like doing ministry together like bonds you as well. And it's like they get to watch you in action and you get to watch them in action. And at first they may be like, I can't. They're like, you can. You just come and you observe. Like, you don't have to do anything. Just come and observe. I'll do all the talking, and that's okay. And then like you can build them into like taking steps towards like engaging. It's like, all right, do you want to initiate this time? Like, do you want to ask the questions on the survey or whatever it is? Like, just getting them to do it to the point where it's like, do you want to be the one that shares the gospel with this person? And or do you want to be the one that leads the class when we're teaching the kids this week? And so it's like you're training and equipping them, and you can give them feedback afterwards. Like, I always love to sit down, even if I send two guys out together, they'll come back to me and it's like, all right, what was it like? What happened? How did it go? You know, how did you think you did? It's like kind of evaluating all of those things. And it's like, because those are great teachable moments. Just like most of the time as you see Jesus, like when he sent the disciples out, he always like kind of did this follow-up afterwards. Like, all right, how did it go? And if you remember, one of them that I love is like, they come back, it's like, even the demons listen to us. Like, can you believe it? Like, the demons listen to it. He's like, I mean, that's cool and all, but what you really need to be excited about is the fact that your name's written in my book of life. Like, that you have salvation. That's what you should be excited about. More so than like the cool things that you have power over demons in my name or whatever. It's like that you have a relationship with me. Like, that's even greater than what you think is great. And so, yeah, and because it's like you learn something from them by the way that they share their faith with somebody. Like, you're going to get sharpened through this process as well. Or you can be like, hey, you were a little aggressive or defensive in that conversation. We don't want to get in an argument, because that's not going to win somebody over. And so, you know, here's some things to think about, like giving them feedback on all of that. And then as you're doing discipleship too, you want to involve them in the larger community. Like, you want to get them more than just their relationship, like one-on-one. Like, you want to involve them in a larger community of believers. And because it's like, you can't be their everything. And you're not going to be able to give them everything they need to mature in their faith. And it's like, you're not going to always be there to be with them. And so it's like, they need to know, it's like, you're not the only person that they can come to, but it's like, and they're going to get a larger vision for what God's capable of, and like what God can do and who he can use, because they may look at you and go, well, I can't do what they do. But it's like, as they see other people, it's like, oh, God uses all kinds of different people with different personalities. Like, these people over here, like, they're totally introverted and God's still using them. And so he can use me too. And then so it's like, I'll have the columns. So I'll have like, all right, how am I building, like doing social things, building a relationship with them? How am I like getting them in the word? How am I training them? How am I involving them in ministry? And the last one is like prayer. You want to pray with them and for them. And so a lot of your ministry to those that you're working with is going to be like done on your knees, you know, by yourself or with others, as you're praying for God to work in their life. Because you're going to have an outside view on them. And so you're going to be able to see like, okay, God, I see their potential to grow. I see their potential to be used by you. And so you're praying for them to step into it. You're praying for them. You're like, I could see them really being good at this. So God, develop a heart for them in this area and stuff. And it's probably things that if you were to tell them, they'd be like, no, don't pray that for me. Because like, we like to be comfortable, but I think deep down we all appreciate those people that have prayed for us to be outside of our comfort zone, because like that's when we're really able to step out of the boat and see God work and see God use us and grow us and stretch us. Because if it's not hard, it's not going to grow us and stretch us, and God wants us to depend on him. And so it's like you can pray for them, or if they've got something really hard going on, or you see them caught in an area of sin, or you see them kind of waffling in their like commitment to their relationship with God, it's like you can pray for them and intercede for them on that behalf. Or they've come to you and it's like, hey, I'm really trying to grow in this area. Like you can, pray for them and like in that way as well. But, but you don't want to just be praying for them on your own. Like you also want to pray with them. Because I think a lot of people see prayer as this big mystical thing and like overcomplicate prayer. And like, I think if you were to poll people, most of them be like, I'm terrible at prayer. I don't know how to do it. I fumble with my words and stuff like that. And so you want to model like, okay, this is what it looks like to pray. And so I love going on prayer walks with my guys. Like, I like to be outside and moving and stuff. So a lot of times we do discipleship walking around campus. And so it's like, today we're just going to do a prayer walk. And it's like, we'll go and pray. Like we might pray for like different areas of campus as we're going, or guys that, that guy's investing in, or like one of I can think of, or a couple of the guys I work with are engineering students. So we'll pray for like God to work in the engineering department or among the baseball team and stuff like that. And so, going around and what I love about doing this too is like, you're also modeling that prayer is more than just praying for those that are sick and hurting and stuff like that, but you're also praying for people to come to know the Lord. You're praying for God to open up doors for ministry to happen. Like all are great things to pray for, but I think, we've gotten in this mindset of like, okay, I only need to pray when something's going wrong. But it's like we can pray prayers of thanksgiving, like, God, thank you for how you're at work in this area. Thank you for this and that. And so like you're getting the opportunity to show them how to pray in a better way. And so yeah, those are things that we'll go through and just kind of look at, okay, and I'll try to look at the semester because I work in semesters, like over the semester, am I hitting all of these areas? Am I too heavy in one area, not enough in another? Because it's like usually there's a bend between some people. It's like it's very easy for them to be relational with their disciples, and so they'll really develop that relationship, but it won't necessarily be really intentional in helping them get to the next level. And then you've got the other side where it's like some people are very geared to, it's like, all right, this is the objective, we're going to get these tasks done, we're going to check all this stuff off, and they're going to move in this direction. And they'll neglect the relationship side of things. And so it's like you want to find that balance of where you're working in all of these areas of their life, because we want to be concerned about their entire life. They're not a project. They're not a task to accomplish. Like this is a child of God whom God loves, and we want to help them grow and mature. And so sometimes it may look like, hey, you're terrible at keeping a schedule. So let's look at like, how do you plan out your life? Like, how do you have a schedule and do things like that? Or it could be like, hey, you seem to like have no idea, like in terms of like a budget. Like let's talk about what does it look like to have a budget and why that's a good thing and how to be a good stewards. And when I was talking with Cindy about this last night, one of the things she said too is like she always likes to start with the circle diagram. And so if you can imagine a bullseye, there's different layers to the bullseye, and she'll have a list of like just different topics, like whether it's, big words like sanctification, justification, to like prayer, sharing your faith, a spirit-filled life, and have them on that bullseye write out, okay, where do you feel the most comfortable in these subjects, and which ones, like, so you put those in the middle, and then as it moves out, like these are the ones you're like, I don't feel as comfortable with these. And so like, so she can get an idea, is like, okay, this is where they're at. And so this helps her decide, okay, this is where I want to focus first, because I can see where they see that they have holes, and so I want to focus on that to help them. Or it may be like, okay, I see that, but I feel like this is more important to do with this person now. But it's like you're at least getting a picture of where they see that they need help as well. And I tell guys all the time, like, I like to start with the basics of the faith and do a lot of foundational work. I feel like a lot of my job is just working at the foundation of our faith. And I say, for some of these guys, they've grown up hearing a lot of this stuff. And I said, well, I don't know, like, what holes you have in this. And so I want to go over these just to make sure we're all on the same page with these things. But it's one thing to know them. It's another thing to be able to teach them to somebody else. Because as I'm doing discipleship, like, I want it to be transferable. I don't want them to leave and go, Mikey knows so much, I could never do that. I want them to leave a time with me going, I could do that. Like, that's not hard. And so the materials I use, the things that I do, it's like I want them to be able to recreate it themselves. So it's like I could walk through it with them, and then the next day they could go through it with somebody else. And so there's a, I'll get it to Todd and Stephen and them, and y'all can send out, like, Cru has a website, or you could Google Cru, CRU, and Compass, and they have a whole discipleship series that's on there, like looking at different things. And we use this on campus all the time. We're tweaking it a little for this next year because UK has done some stuff to, like, updated some of the stuff, so we're using what they have. But it has, and the guy that wrote it, Roger Hershey, he's got some talks on there that talks about, like, discipleship stuff. Got some great info on there, but it goes through a lot of just different things on, like, here's good topics to cover, and it gives you, like, just a base of what to do. And so, but yeah, it's like discipleship. It's an intentional relationship with somebody. It's taking what you've learned, how you've grown, and investing that into somebody else so they can turn around and invest that in somebody else, and it can continue down the line. Like, I'm assuming we've already talked about 2 Timothy 2:2, how Paul invested in Timothy, and Timothy invested in faithful men who are able to invest in others. Like, that's the idea of what we want to do, because it's cool to see God at work through that, and it's cool to see them get excited. It's like, oh, I can do this too. Like, it's not something that I have to, like, just leave to the professionals or the people that have done it for 20 years. Because I love in the Bible you have stories like the woman at the well. Like, she knew Jesus for like half an hour, and then she's the one that goes and tells her whole village about him. And so I think we get in our minds like, oh, we have to have all this education. We have to have all that. We have to know all the answers, but we don't. Like, we can just share what we know, how God's been at work in our lives, and that can be an encouragement to somebody else. And it's like, as we learn more, we can pass that on and things like that. And so I hope y'all are learning through this weekend. It's like, discipleship doesn't have to be as formal or as scary as we think it is, but it's something that, as believers we're called to do, is to make disciples. And that's, so that's more than just like sharing our faith or inviting them to something, but it's like investing your life in somebody to see them grow and mature so they can invest their life into somebody else. But yeah. Yeah, and so, yeah, you do life with them, be intentional and in pointing them to Jesus, share what you're learning. And yeah, it's cool. And then you get to step back and just trust God to work. We don't have to force anybody to do anything. We can just share. And it's like, as they lean into the Holy Spirit, like, we're going to get to see them grow and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that's what I have for now. Thank you.